Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service on this 5th of June. Welcome you to the Alaska Weather Show. As always, you can get your latest information here in the evening hours, and you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com. Search for AKwx TV or Alaska Weather TV for short. And this is brought to you in part by a partnership with the Alaska Public Media and our partner stations KUAC, KYUK, of course, and KTOO in Southeast. So thanks for all of our partners in helping to spread the weather awareness and safety message around our state today. 1-800-472-0391 is how you can find your weather information on the phone. That's a toll-free number anywhere in the state. And online, weather.gov/Alaska. If you type in mobile.weather.gov, you'll be able to get a faster loading version of that same web page and forecast information on your phone. Save that to your home screen. It'll act just like your own personal weather app. And if you can't find what you're looking for, let me know. david.snyder@noaa.gov is an easy way to find me. Looking out toward Nikolai earlier this afternoon, courtesy of another partner, the FAA and their aviation weather cameras that most of you know very well. Beautiful shot out there. And again, anytime thunder roars, it's time to take shelter. Take a break inside for a little while, let that storm pass by. Once it's gone for about 30 minutes, it's usually a safe time to come back outside. Again, lightning can strike out away from thunderstorms up to 10 miles sometimes, and those are what we like to call those bolts from the blue. They're not out of nowhere. They are out of a thunderstorm cloud that perhaps is a little bit further away than you thought it was, or closer than you thought it was. And again, it's not too hard to get a strike out away from some of these thunderstorms. They are producing quite a bit of lightning today, all the way from the interior, heading toward the Denali National Park area from the north. This is looking southeast from Minchumina. And then out toward Lime Village, you can see some pretty dark skies, even a rain shaft right there. The storm was covering up the sky. A lot of lightning out that way this afternoon for at least a couple hours. And as you look toward Haines and northward, and there's some storm clouds there as well. Lightning activity generally on the Canadian side today, but we do expect to see some of that drifting southward into the evening hours there. Might get a few strikes in the region. And tomorrow looks like a better chance for more parts of southeast to have shower and storm activity for you. And that's, of course, important to fire danger across the upper and the eastern sections of the interior there. In fact, extreme fire danger is listed there with some of the fire indices right now. Most areas are looking at high fire danger, which is still not great, but most of that is confined to the interior and just to the west of Fairbanks into parts of the Koyukuk Valley and also the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, and also parts of southwestern Alaska right now. Also keeping a watch on northern parts of southeast where rain conditions have been a little bit slim in the recent future. Satellite pictures across the region. Here is the visible version of that, and you can see several waves of low pressure, one of those out across the west. You can also see low clouds dropping southward into the northern plains. With that, we get a lot of stratus and fog and cooler temperatures. Morning temps are only in the 20s in some cases there today. Out across the Gulf, quite a bit of open air there, not a whole lot of cloud cover across the central and eastern sections as you head into the Pacific Northwest. One area of low pressure is seen here, another sitting right across the northern Gulf. Watch again as the system moves around. You can see a wave of low pressure here and also across the interior. All of that is working together with the moisture and the heat of the day. Plenty of sunshine, especially for the western interior, is allowing to create that instability. What is instability? Well, if you have hot air in a balloon, let's say, what does it want to do? It wants to rise, right, into, it is less dense, it wants to rise into the upper atmosphere and float, as we would say, and because it's more buoyant. And as that instability works with the moisture here and condenses the moisture, we get clouds to bubble up and form, and if enough of that can happen, the droplets start moving around the cloud, bouncing into each other. If they freeze, that creates hail, and the static electricity from that, combined with the charge against the surface of the Earth, can create quite a lightning show in many cases there. As we go through the satellite picture one more time, notice you can see the clouds bubbling up pretty much in the same places they were the last couple days, right there along the Alaska Range and generally to the north. They're moving from north to south, and we expect that trend to continue again tomorrow, as you'll see in the aviation winds coming up here in just a little bit. Winds are generally light, so that means storms are not moving very fast. And they're also moving out of an area that has a lot of instability compared to regions that don't, into south central and southwest. So generally, most of these storms are weakening within an hour or so after they've formed. Showers and thunderstorms are forming across the interior again late this afternoon and into this evening. We did see a little bit of a storm activity around Haines just to the north, and showers are offshore of Sitka right now with high pressure in control of the Bering and keeping things kind of locked down with areas of fog and low clouds into Norton Sound and also across the North Slope with high pressure over the Arctic. As we go into tonight, watch for a broad area of low pressure across southern southeast, another focused area of low pressure around the Kenai Peninsula, and a trough that extends all the way into the interior. Along this boundary is where we're going to see most of our cloud cover and most of our evening shower activity. And a lot of that's going to be over the mountains there, especially around south central, from the Kenai Mountains to the Chugach, all the way up into the Talkeetnas and into the Alaska Range. To the west of that, we've got a lot of dry air here, and for many places along the coast, it's certainly been a little bit cooler, where we've had that marine layer just kind of lingering right along the coastal villages. And you'll see that reflected in the temperatures here in just a minute. Thursday, we're expecting another area of widely scattered shower and storm activity. The main threats of this is going to be lightning. If you're planning to be outside for any activity, just be prepared for the opportunity for shower and storm activity to develop. And if that happens, have a way to get inside and have some shelter for a little while. And certainly pay attention to the weather as that forms around your area. Shower and storm activity may also increase across southeastern Alaska as we go through your Thursday. Notice high pressure out in the Bering Sea does not move very much, and areas of fog are expected again across the North Slope as we go. Generally dry and calm conditions across the Gulf of Alaska there. And as we get into Friday, shower and storm activity will be back across the interior, pretty much the same old place that it has been for most of the week. For southeast, we expect a little less activity for you. You'll probably see some showers, but the threat for convective weather will be a lot more focused across the Alcan border there and also across the interior rather than right over southeast at this time. Let's take a look at temperatures across the north with the low clouds and the onshore flow. We get 20s and 30s for you. For the interior, though, with very mild weather continuing, upper 40s to lower 50s, all the way into Bristol Bay, King Salmon, Dillingham, Bethel, all fairly mild. 37 in Macoriac, a little cooler there. 36 around Gamble and Savuka. Mid to upper 40s for southeast. 52 in Kodiak. The Aleutian Chain and the Peninsula generally in the lower to mid 40s tonight, and South Central back in the mid to upper 40s as well. High temperatures tomorrow in the interior will be some of our warmest, with upper 60s and lower 70s for many, from McGrath to Fairbanks to Tanana, all in the lower 70s there. Fort Yukon looking at about 69. Same goes for Northway and Eagle, and Talkeetna also fairly mild. Kenai and Homer will be a little bit cooler there, mid to upper 60s for you. 63 in Kodiak, mid to upper 60s for parts of southeast. Ketchikan and Craig probably about 65. 46 around St. Paul, 40s and 50s for many in the Chain and the Alaska Peninsula. Gamble looking at about 40 degrees. Overnight low temperatures Friday morning into the daytime. We see readings generally in the 40s for most of the interior. Some places in the mid and eastern interior likely closer to 50 degrees. 20s and 30s up north. 35 in Shishmaref. Just shy of 50 for many in southeast, 51 in Kodiak, mid-40s for folks around south central and the Kenai Peninsula, Cordova 46. And in the Chain, you're looking at temps also in the mid-40s. Bristol Bay temps in the afternoon on Friday, pushing the 70-degree mark, 47 around Macoriac, 68 in Bethel. McGrath looking at about 70, lower 70s for many in the interior and the middle Tanana Valley. 45 around Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, and 38 around Utqiagvik, with southeast looking at temperatures back in the mid-60s for most places, pushing 70 though in Haines and Skagway. Going forward, as we go into the 8 to 14-day period, ending June 19th, the early part of June, it looks warmer than average. The signals are telling us there's a better chance that temperatures will be warmer than average across the western interior and parts of southwest. Southeast not seeing quite as strong of a signal for that. What about precipitation? Chances are things will be above normal across southwestern Alaska, with some indication for wetter weather in southeast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Under aviation weather now, it's possible that by early in the morning we'll still have a little bit of convection going around the middle Yukon Valley there. Watch for shower and a few thunderstorm starts there to continue perhaps into the evening hours. Watch for IFR across the North Slope all the way through the Bering Strait, just to about St. Matthew and down to nearly St. Paul into the Yukon Delta. Most of the eastern chain up through the Alaska Peninsula and Cold Bay all the way through the eastern side of Kodiak Island and the eastern Gulf are looking at fairly widespread IFR. Most of the interior, though, will not be. Expect exactly opposite. VFR conditions there, with some marginal conditions across the Alaska Range and into the very extreme west and southern Susitna Valley out toward southwest and Bristol Bay, across coastal parts of the Seward Peninsula and up toward Yakutat. And that's about where it stops, with a little bit of MVFR creeping into some of our southern inside passage waters. By the afternoon, though, we expect to see more of a threat from convection across the south and southwestern interior and across south central for the Talkeetnas, the Susitna Valley into the Kenai Mountains and the Chugach, and also across southeast. This will be a little bit different for many of you are not expecting widespread or strong storms, but there will be the possibility for shower and thunderstorm activity over parts of the panhandle for your Thursday. So count that in again, as that could rearrange your day a little bit or perhaps at least delay it. So just be careful out there. For Friday morning, watch for some overnight shower and storm activity across some parts of the Middle Yukon Valley and northward into the Upper Koyukuk. Watch for areas of IFR to continue across the North Slope and across the Norton Sound region, and for most of the chain into parts of Bristol Bay and really most of the Gulf. Marginal conditions will layer that as well, and certainly bound that into the northern parts of the Gulf and the outer coast of southeast, and push inland a little bit across the Koyukuk Valley and across many parts of the lower Yukon. By the afternoon, some of that will peel back just a little bit. Watch for marginal conditions across west and southwest and into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, a large part of Cook Inlet, Kenai Fjords region, as well as Prince William Sound, and really most of southeast now will be dealing with marginal conditions as we get into the afternoon. And once again, convection, shower and storm activity will be possible in pretty much the same old places as it has been really most of the week. Here's a look at your pass conditions for tomorrow. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass look to be A-OK. VFR conditions there for both of our northbound passes. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass looking to be marginal and then clearing out a little bit into the afternoon there. Watch for shower and storm activity develop, especially on the western side and then across the Susitna Valley. Rainy Pass looking to be VFR. We'll watch for convection there and for windy pass throughout the day. VFR conditions there for Isabel Pass too. Things look pretty good through most of the day. Watching for storm clouds there. Not so much of a threat around Mentasta for your Thursday there, so that's good news. VFR and Tanita Pass expecting to see marginal conditions changing to VFR as we go throughout the day. Watch for a few shower and storm clouds in the region and even over Portage, especially around Girdwood and over the Chugach Mountains there. We watch to see shower and storm activity throughout the day. Chilkoot and White Pass expected to be VFR and chance for shower and storms in the region there, especially as you head over into Canada. Freezing levels show us that 2, 4, even the 6,000-foot line is in the vicinity of the Alcan border there. Most areas around the interior, the west coast, are ranging from about 6,000 to 8,000 feet for the freezing levels, and you can see a little bit of cooler air hovering right over the southern end of southeast. Otherwise, not a big change out in the west either. So we go over to icing, and you'll see most of what we're talking about is kind of a high-level threat. If you're up above 10,000 feet, you may run into some icing potential there that's reaching into that isolated moderate range. But really our greatest concern over most of the interior, southwest and south central and southeast tomorrow will be isolated convection that could lead to isolated but severe icing potential. So steer clear of that, of course, as you are planning your trip and certainly en route. For the jet stream, a broad westerly flow sweeping across the North Pacific is pushing winds into our region around 75 to 80 knots or so. But high pressure right now across the Gulf of Anadyr and eastern Russia is really in control. It's giving us that northerly flow. That's keeping that moist and unstable air dropping southward into south central, southwest, and now pushing some of that into southeast, thus the shower and storm activity. So we've got generally light northerly winds across most of the interior and southeast, 10 to 15 knots, just about all areas. One exception will be this low pressure interruption across the north slope, and that is changing your winds around a little bit as we go. East to westerly winds across the central chain and some of the southern Bering Sea coast. You can see very little change at 3,000 feet in that area. Up north, we've got a little bit of a different placement of the low pressure system at 3,000 feet, so the winds may be a little bit more northerly for places like Utqiagvik and Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. Otherwise, northerly and northwesterly winds for most of the central and eastern Gulf Coast communities there at 3,000 feet. Overall, winds remain light at both of those mandatory levels. Turbulence potential then, we're generally looking at the central and western chain below 4,000 feet. Some areas there could reach up to considerable moderate from Kiska Island out towards Shemya. But once again, any convection and thunderstorms would imply isolated but the potential for severe turbulence. Be careful out there. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms, why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region. The rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not, didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense in what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. You know, there are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. Well, one of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, you know, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back with a look at your sea ice edge, you'll notice the marginal ice zone continues to expand into the ice pack. That's what you see in the north with the heavy white colors there, and just off shore there from Dead Horse all the way toward Utqiagvik, we still see some 80% concentrations or higher. One thing the Alaska Sea Ice Program really wanted to stress with this image for me today was that what you see in the marginal ice zone here, especially in the bluer areas, will expand over the next several days. In fact, it might even connect with what we see here across the Chukchi Sea. But they wanted me to let you know that even though you see blue, that doesn't mean that it's going to be 40 or 50%. Chances are it's still a very high concentration in that marginal ice. So it could be 70, 75, 79% concentration. So a lot of ice still in that marginal ice zone, not open water, what you're seeing there on the map right now. So consider that carefully, even if you see that white north of Utqiagvik slowly go away. You can always check the latest conditions and the forecast anytime, heading to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for the Alaska Sea Ice Program. On to your marine weather now in southeast. Light winds will prevail, generally 10 knots in most of the inside passages there, 2 to 3 foot seas, a little bit of a stronger southerly flow up the Lynn Canal. West and northwesterlies coming down the outer coast, 10 to 20 knots with about 4 to 6 foot seas there on your Thursday. For Friday, a gentle onshore shift with about 10 to 15 knots coming in, anywhere from 3 to 4 foot seas on the outside, and 2 to 3 foot seas continue on the inside. A little bit more of a southerly flow through Stevens Passage now. Southerlies continue in the Lynn Canal, 50 knots and 3 foot seas. And again, watch out for rain and thunder. A better chance for thunderstorms tomorrow in southeast. That'll be for Thursday. For westerlies across Prince William Sound, 10 knots there. We get 2 foot seas out of that. 4 foot seas across the western Gulf, and light winds across Cook Inlet. Also looking at a westerly flow and generally small seas, 1 to 2 feet on Thursday. South and westerlies will continue up Cook Inlet, 10 knots, 2 foot seas, 3 foot seas around the Barrens actually, and a light westerly flow inside of Prince William Sound. Generally light winds will continue as we head into the weekend. For Bristol Bay and southwest, look for a northwesterly flow, 20 knots and 5 foot seas. Northerlies down the Alaska Peninsula coastline, 15 knots and 5 foot seas there. Light winds, small seas for Shelikof Strait, and west and northwesterlies for most of the western Gulf and southwest of Kodiak there for Thursday. The winds are going to pick up just a little bit more down to your south. You're not going to see a huge impact from that yet on Friday, but you'll notice those seas are starting to climb a little bit. We'll look at that in here in just a minute. Northwesterlies continue for Shelikof Strait, 10 knots, 2 foot seas, and 4 to 6 foot seas across the northwestern Gulf. And look for small seas as well inside of Bristol Bay, 10 knots and 2-foot seas. Looks good as the fish start to come in. East and northeasterlies across the southern Bering Sea coast there, 15 to 25. 25 knots mainly out around Kiska to Shemya with an 8-foot sea, and 7 to 11-foot seas across the Pacific coast, 20 knots generally from the east and northeast on Thursday. Just about everyone across the central and eastern chain will see 15 to 25 knots for your Friday, looking at about 9 to 10-foot seas on the Pacific side, and about 4 to 6-foot seas for the central chain, 8-foot seas as you head west of AKwx with that east and southeasterly flow feeding into the next weather maker there. For Thursday across the west coast, look for a west and northwesterly flow. High pressure sitting very close to St. Matthew and north of St. Paul, so you get this clockwise rotation, we call it. 15 to about 20 knots there with a 4 to 6-foot sea, 3-foot seas for St. Paul and St. George. Looks like a nice day out there. Westerlies continue into Norton Sound. That may also trap some low clouds and fog in the region with high pressure so close. 15 knots north of Nunivak Island out towards St. Matthew, and north and northeasterlies coming off the land. Probably will be a little warmer, 20 knots there with a 4 to 6-foot sea as we go into your Friday. For the North Slope now, easterlies will be the strongest from Prudhoe Bay toward Kaktovik, 15 to 25, and 4 to 5-foot seas there in the open waters. Anywhere from 2-foot seas there down toward the Bering Strait, about 4-foot seas, generally 10 knots inside of the Chukchi Sea region. As we get into Friday, the wind should lighten up even more. A southerly flow around Kotzebue Sound, somewhat variable, in fact, around Point Lay, and then easterly still blowing a little stronger from Prudhoe Bay toward Kaktovik at about 15 to 20 knots. 5-foot seas expected for your Friday. Recapping tonight's weather, showers and thunderstorms are expected across many in the interior and working their way southward. That should diminish as we get into the overnight hours, which is how we have it depicted here. Watch for showers across southeast and maybe even a thunderstorm toward the late afternoon and early evening hours with high pressure across the Bering Sea. That will stay put as we go into Thursday and Friday. It's working with low pressure across the interior to bring in that moisture and move that southward. So we move these weather makers out of a higher instability area and move them southward. So as storms cross over the mountains and into your area, they may be going strong briefly, but they'll probably die off fairly quickly. For southeast, watch for widely scattered shower and thunderstorm activity as we get into your Thursday, and a lesser of a chance probably as we head into Friday there, but watch for showers and storms to continue for most in south central. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.